KKG, I think it's YouTube is not streamed, right? Sir?
It is going to stream, yes.
Yeah.
Both on both YouTube as well as Facebook.
Yeah.
Should be coming.
Okay.
Yeah, it is already live on YouTube.
Yeah.
And on Facebook also. Let me check.
Okay, what is it, Papa?
Yeah, Facebook also it's live. Yes.
Okay.
Some of the old tune is coming. The old one is coming.
KKG, YouTube is, I think, not active.
Not active.
Yeah. Please check.
Oh, it is active. I can see. It's active. 3 people are watching. I can see that there are 3 people watching also. You see, right? You just go to YouTube, the Facebook page. The Gita Jayanti channel. Yeah, you can see 4 people active, 4 people watching.
Showing the question. I see it streaming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Showing the question.
Can you just type what I'm just putting a message, Hari Om, and so that you know. The questioning. So that question is also coming, right? You can see that there is. I'm putting a Hari Om. It can be seen by everybody, right? On the YouTube as well as Facebook. That is coming. No problem.
Yeah, it is. I can see it.
Karthik Tirupati. Somebody says yes, it is live.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you. See Professor A. Rao.
He was in town, Ramsubramanianji, last week.
Ramsubramanianji, correct.
3 days ago. Well,
it's only 1 minute, so I think I'll switch to the default slide, and then when Swamiji comes, we can start, right? So you are ready, right?
Yes, I'm ready. I think
Actually, 1 minute left.
start with the invocation.
7 o'clock sharp.
Was I announce the invocation? Invite Padmini.
Hand over to now the stage is handed over to Vasudaji. So I will stop sharing the screen and make you as the spotlight you for now. Okay.
Thank you. Welcome all of you to our International Gita Forum, the 4th session. Before we formally start the session, I'd like to invite Padmini Chandrasekhar ji to kick us off with the invocation prayer. Padmini
We
ji.
just wait. Do you have to wait till Swamiji joins, because he hasn't yet enabled his video yet? I'm not sure if he has joined yet. Come back. Okay, he joined in the beginning.
No, Swamiji is already here.
Okay, great. Okay, now we can start. Sure.
Om Shri Paramatmane Namaha. Atha Srimad Bhagavad Gita Dhyanam. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Grathitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamrita Varshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayini Ambatvam Anusandadhami Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshini Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pullara Vindayata Patra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajwalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraika Panaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Gitamrita Duhe Namaha Sarvopanishado Gavo Dogdha Gopala Nandanaha Partho Vatsasudhir Bhokta Dugdham Gitamritam Mahat Vasudeva Sutan Devam Kamsachanura Mardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Yatkrpatamaham Vande Paramananda Madhavam Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Sonvanti Divyaistavaihi Vedai Sangapadakramopanisadaihi Gayanti Yam Samagaha Dhyanavastita Tadgatena Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yoginaha Yasyantam Navidussura Suraganaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha.
Thank you, Padmini ji, for such an auspicious start to our event. With great pleasure today, we welcome Pujya Swami Sarvapriyananda ji to the 3rd edition of the 2022 International Gita Forum. We are also pleased to extend our very warm welcome to Sri Jayachandran ji, Chairman of the Hindu Endowments Board, Sri Rajan Krishnan ji, Chairman, Hindu Advisory Board, Sri Rajasekhar ji, CEO of the Hindu Endowments Board, Sri Srinivasan ji, Chairman, Gita Jayanti Committee, all the leaders of the Gita Jayanti partner organizations, and the team members of the Gita Jayanti Committee. We're also very pleased to have all of you distinguished delegates joining us for the forum today, globally, all the way from Australia to the west coast of the USA. This year, Gita Jayanti Singapore is celebrating its Silver Jubilee, and to mark this, the International Gita Forum has 4 sessions this year with Swamiji alone to share his words of wisdom with us all. The IGF Forum every year attempts to provide a glimpse into the vast depths of the Bhagavad Gita and continues to highlight its relevance for us today. Today, we have Swami Sarvapriyananda ji joining us, and he is the head of the Vedanta Society of New York. For those who are following the Vedanta lecture series, he needs little introduction. But for those who are listening to Swamiji for the first time today, it will become obvious as to why he's one of the preeminent speakers on Vedanta today. There will be a brief question and answer session after the lecture, so please put your questions in the chat box. Due to time constraints, only a few questions will be posed to Swamiji. We thank you in advance for your kind understanding. Without further ado, be ready to be revitalized as Swamiji elaborates on chapter 4 of the Gita under the title Spiritualizing Action. Swamiji, please.
Somebody have to unmute.
Am I audible to all of you now?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityurma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real, lead us from darkness unto light, lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsajano Ramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Namaste, everybody. I must congratulate and thank the Gita Jayanti, the International Gita Forum, for conducting classes on the Bhagavad Gita for so many years and for organizing this program. It is a great privilege for me to be a part of this worldwide virtual program. So thank you very much and congratulations on 25 years of the Gita Jayanti. The Bhagavad Gita is one text. If you want a text to represent all of Hindu wisdom, the vast literature of Hinduism, it can be represented in one text, and that is the Bhagavad Gita. Just about every tradition in Hinduism, whether it is Advaita, or Dvaita, or Vishishtadvaita, Shuddhadvaita, and all the other Vedanta schools and different strands of Hinduism, Kashmiri Shaivism, each of them have their own interpretations, their own commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita has inspired millions and millions of people across centuries of time. So as the moderator said, it's a vast depth. And so we shall plunge into the depth today in a particular place which I have chosen in the chapter 4, which I believe there are some two of the most beautiful verses and most powerful verses in the Bhagavad Gita and most wisdom-packed and practical verses in the Bhagavad Gita. The 18th verse of chapter 4 and the 24th verse of chapter 4. And packed in between these two verses is the topic of today's talk, spiritualizing action. What I mean by that is, in spiritual life, there are only two questions. The first question is, what is spiritual life? What is God realization, moksha, nirvana, enlightenment, whatever you call it? So what is that? How can we attain it? That's question number 1. But the second question is equally important. The second question is that before spiritual life, during spiritual life, and after the attainment of enlightenment, our life still goes on. We have this life to lead, whether you're a monk or a householder, whether you are elderly or young, you are working in a profession or a homemaker, whatever, wherever we are, we have a life to lead. So how do we lead that life? So these are the two questions which we have when we come to spiritual life. Enlightenment, God realization, moksha, nirvana, whatever you call it, that is one. The second one is, how do we lead our lives in the light of this knowledge that we get from Bhagavad Gita or from any spiritual teacher? So today's subject, the verses we will take up will actually answer both of these questions very beautifully. I think the highest Advaita teachings, non-dual teachings, and in the most practical form. Let us not forget the Bhagavad Gita. People have this idea that it is spiritual, philosophical, somehow implying that it may not be practical, it may not be for everybody, but it's just the opposite. Remember, the Bhagavad Gita was not taught in an ashram or on a mountaintop. It was taught in the middle of a battlefield on purpose. That means the worst possible occupation, the worst possible circumstances of human life, violence and warfare. In the midst of that also, how can one spiritualize one's life? The point there being that we are not engaged in warfare, but that means in our active life, in our day-to-day lives, in whichever profession, wherever we are, it should be possible to spiritualize our life, spiritualize action. If it is possible for Arjuna and Krishna in the middle of the Kurukshetra battlefield to spiritualize life, then it should be possible for each of us. Our life is not that complicated. The 18th verse of the Bhagavad Gita is a little paradoxical. Let me read out the verse. It's one of the most well-known verses and also one of the most interesting. The language itself is paradoxical language. Verse 18 of chapter 4 of Bhagavad Gita. Karmanya karmaya pashed akarmani cha karmaya sabuddhiman manusheshu sayukta kritsna karma krit. He who sees inaction in action and action in inaction is wise amongst men. He is poised and he is the doer or the performer of all actions. Now, how paradoxical? Why is it paradoxical? One who sees when there is action, when there is work, activity, that one is, he sees that as no action at all. And when there is apparently no action, this wise person, so-called wise person, sees that there is action in that so-called non-action. So how do you see action in the midst of no action in the midst of action? It sounds very paradoxical. And there is a rather cute story why such language is used. The story is that when the Mahabharata, of which the Bhagavad Gita forms the heart of the Mahabharata, but this vast epic, when it was composed and dictated by Vyasa, he needed a secretary who will take down notes, and it was none other than Ganesha. We have just celebrated Ganesh Chaturthi. So Lord Ganesha agreed to take down the verses as they were composed and dictated by Vyasa. But Ganesha had a condition that I will write it down, but you have to keep telling me if you pause, I will stop. And once I stop writing, I will not start writing again. So you have to continuously compose verses and dictate it to me, which is difficult. Sanskrit verses, you have to continuously compose, and not one or two, but tens of thousands, 100,000 verses. So Vyasa had a counter condition. He said, yes, I will do so, and you will write down continuously. But my condition is you should only write down those verses which you understand. Don't write down anything without understanding it. So Ganesha agreed. Ganesha is a Vishala Buddhi, his endless prajna. So he thought, I will understand everything. But what Vyasa did was, when he got a little breathless, he was composing so many verses, when he needed a little rest, he composed this. Sometimes he composed a verse with a paradoxical language, with difficult language. So Ganesha had to think just for a moment, and Vyasa could draw a breath and then compose some more verses. So that is one story, that sometimes in the Gita and in the Mahabharata also, you find this very strange, very interesting language. Of course, there's a deeper reason why this language is used. The reason is that the highest truth, non-dual truth, which is beyond space, time, and causation, which is our real nature, which is not physical, which is not mental, which is supramental, which is spiritual, it is beyond language. It cannot be expressed in our day-to-day language. So now this is a problem. If you cannot express the highest truth in language, and yet Gita is language, it's a book. The Upanishads are language. So if you cannot express in language, and yet you have to express in language, what is the way out? So the rishis, they devised different strategies to beat this problem. How can you say something which is not sayable? How can you express something which cannot be expressed in words? So there are different ways. One of the ways is well known, the neti neti, that not this, not this. If you cannot say what it is, the ultimate reality, Brahman, at least one can say what it is not. We can say it is not X, Y, Z, it is not A, B, C, D, pointing thereby to the unsayable, the truth which is beyond language. That's one strategy. Another strategy is this one, that if you cannot say what it is directly, you can use paradoxical language. Upanishads abound in such paradoxical language. Further than the furthest, nearer than the nearest, it moves and it moves not. It is greater than the greatest, smaller than the smallest. So paradoxical language. And here in the Bhagavad Gita, you find this verse. To see in the midst of no action, to see action, and in the midst of action, to see no action at all. What does it mean? There is a very, very clear meaning. The meaning is that from the perspective of the enlightened person, the Brahmagyani, who has realized that I am Satchidananda, whose actual experience is that Chidananda Rupaha Shivoham, I am of the nature of consciousness, I am of the nature of bliss. It's not theory, it's not chanting, it's not poetry, it's a fact. Just as we feel right now, I am this little body mind, this little person. The enlightened person has seen that, yes, there is the body, there is the mind, there is the personality. But the deeper truth about the human personality is that we are not body mind. Beyond body mind, deeper than body mind, transcending body mind is existence, consciousness, bliss, Satchidananda, the Atman, Brahman. Many terms are used. I am that. And from that perspective, I see that there is this one eternal, non-changing reality. And all actions which are done at the level of the body or the mind are appearances in this consciousness, in this one unlimited existence. So from the perspective of the enlightened person, though activities may be performed at the level of the body, you may be talking, walking, working, though activities are going on at the level of the mind, one is thinking, perceiving, feeling, understanding, yet from the perspective of Atman, from the perspective of consciousness, no activity. There is no change. So it is one eternal, calm reality. One good way of understanding this is, I remember in our main monastery in India, which is on the bank of the Ganga, near Calcutta, Belur Mutt, which was established by none other than Swami Vivekananda. So when you cross the river, on one side is Calcutta, on the other side is the Belur Mutt monastery in Howrah. When you cross the river, there are small boats. It will take you from Belur Mutt to Calcutta, or from Calcutta to Belur Mutt. When you cross the river, often you will get this illusion that you are sitting on the boat and the boat is moving, but suddenly you will feel boat is not moving. You are sitting on the boat and in the middle of the river, suddenly you will feel that the shores, the bank of the river, the temples on the bank, the houses, the trees, they are moving. Actually, I am moving on the boat, but the illusion is created that I am somehow stationary, and it is the trees and the temples on the bank of the river which are moving. And I have seen this. I have seen this. Now, why am I saying this? It was so interesting for me and so thrilling for me to read Adi Shankaracharya more than 1,400 years ago, when he is explaining this verse, Karmanya Karmaya Pashet. He says, do you know what it is like? It is like when you cross a river in a boat, and suddenly you see the trees on the other shore are moving. Actually, the trees on the Sarasiva Tatadruma, the Druma means the trees on the banks of the river, they are moving. But actually, he explains, the trees are not moving, the houses are not moving. It is the boat which is moving, but somehow it creates the illusion the boat is stationary and the trees are moving. Exactly like that, from the enlightened person's perspective, he sees that actually I am pure consciousness. Activity is going on at the level of the body. Activity is going on at the level of the mind. And these activities of the body mind are superimposed on consciousness. And I feel I am acting, I am working. But actually, I am not working. Just like the trees and the temples on the bank of the river, steady, unchanging, awareness itself, existence itself. What is working? Like the boat is moving. So similarly, the sharira, the body is working. The indriyas, the eyes and the ears and the karma indriyas, like the tongue and the hands, these are working. These are moving. But their movement, their activity is now superimposed in Sanskrit and in Vedanta, adhyasta, superimposed on me. The change which is in the world, the change which is in the body, the change which is in the indriyas, the change which is in the mind, now appears to be change in me. And I feel I am walking, talking, I am thinking, desiring, my mind is restless or my mind is peaceful. All of this is superimposed upon me. So I was so thrilled to see the experience which I had on the Ganga, crossing the river, 1400 years ago. Adi Shankaracharya is giving the same experience. We also have this experience, train station. So when you go on a train, the train starts from the platform. You suddenly, for a moment, you will get the illusion the platform is moving. You are sitting steady. Sometimes you get this illusion. Another example I can give, on a screen, there is a movie playing. So there may be cops and robbers and car chases and action stories. So many things may be happening in the movie. But actually, all of it is pictures and sound on a screen. And nothing in the screen is moving. In fact, if the screen starts moving, your movie will be disturbed. Your movie will be spoiled if the screen starts moving. The screen is steady. Similarly, you or I, the enlightened person, sees that I am pure consciousness. Chidananda Rupa Shivoham. From my perspective, no activity. Although tremendous activity is going on at the level of the body, it's going on at the level of the mind. So this is the secret. Karmanni akarmaya pashyet. In the midst of karma, the one who sees no action at all. Who is that? The enlightened one. The enlightened one can honestly claim that when I am working, that means the enlightened person, doing tremendous activity. Adi Shankaracharya, how much activity he did, traveled across the length and breadth of Bharatavarsha, establishing these monasteries, reforming religion, setting up the 10 orders of monks. So many things he did, composing the extensive bhashyas on Upanishads and Brahma Sutra and Bhagavad Gita, writing many other prakarana granthas and beautiful hymns of devotion. All of these activities he did. But if you ask him, are you doing a lot of work? Are you under a lot of work pressure, stressed? People here in Manhattan always stressed. They say this is a city which does not sleep. So Manhattan city which does not sleep. People are extremely busy. I know Singapore is exactly like that also. So extremely busy. People are up and doing all the time. If you ask Shankaracharya, so much work you are doing, so are you under stress? Are you doing a lot of work? He would say, I'm not doing anything at all. I means pure consciousness, the witness consciousness. So this is the meaning from the perspective of the enlightened person. In the midst of work, also no work actually. Swami Vivekananda, he says, Gita teaches the secret of work, how to be engaged in action. How? He says, in the midst of intense activity, there should be eternal calm within. Inside, there should be deep peace. I know I am Satchidananda Brahma. This is not born, does not die. It's not born with the birth of the body, does not die with the death of the body. I am immortal. It does not age with the aging of the body. It does not go through ups and downs with the highs and lows of the mind. It does not become disturbed with the restlessness of the mind. So this Satchidananda I am, so there is eternal peace within, in the midst of external activity, intense activity combined with intense peace within. And he says the opposite also. When there is no activity outside, the general thing is, if there is no activity outside, suppose you're taking a vacation or sitting quietly, people tend to fall asleep, become tamasic. He says externally there may be complete stillness. Internally, he says mind should be able to work like a blast furnace. So a higher creativity, deep meditation can go on intensely inside, though physically one may be restrained and sitting in an asana, in a meditation posture. So this is the secret of work. Intense calmness in the midst of intense activity, and when there is no external activity, internally one can be intensely active. Internally means at the level of the mind. Now, the second part of the verse says exactly the opposite. That akarmani karmaya pashyet. When there is apparently no action, one sees action. What does this mean? Those who are unenlightened, those of us, we see ourselves as body and mind. So for me, action means when I'm walking, talking, going to the office, or working in the ashram, action. No action means I will sit quietly and close my eyes. That is no action. I will give up all my duties and go away to the Himalayas and become a sadhu, a monk. What are you doing? I am giving up karma. The enlightened person is saying, no, you are not. That is also karma. The unenlightened person, when he or she thinks that I will give up this, the world is so disturbing, world is creating such restlessness in my mind, so I will not be engaged in the world. I will give up activities. I will give up karma altogether. The enlightened person will say, that is also karma. Physically, if one sits quietly and thinks that it is not karma, that is also karma. You're still bound by the law of karma. Why? Because as long as I'm identified with body and mind, as long as I'm not enlightened, as long as I do not realize that aham brahmasmi, I am Brahman, so long I will be identified with body and mind. The activity of the body and mind will be my activity, and the so-called non-activity of the body and mind will also be my activity, because I'm restraining the body and mind. So to explain this, a very good example is fasting. So what is fasting? Basically, fasting means not eating. Not eating. But when you ask people, what are you doing? I am fasting. Notice the language. What are you doing? So fasting is also kind of doing. It's non-doing. It's not eating, but it takes effort. If I am hungry, I will not eat. It is actually taking effort. Mentally, I am controlling myself. More effort. See, it's much easier to eat. More difficult not to eat. So effort is involved. When I am identified with body and mind, to do something, effort is involved. To do nothing, then also effort, maybe more effort is involved. To restrain oneself also takes effort. So the enlightened person says that the non-enlightened person, when they think that I am not doing anything, you're still doing something. This was the great advice given by Sri Krishna to Arjuna. Arjuna said, I don't want to be involved in this nonsense. This battlefield, I don't like it anymore. I will give up everything and I will stay quietly. Sri Krishna's answer to that is, you think you are going to give up action, but nobody can give up action even for a moment, as long as you think your body, and when body is always active, mind is always active. So if you think you're giving up action, if you go away to the Himalayas, you will still be engaged in action. From an enlightened person's perspective, that is still action. So akarmani karmaya pashyet. In the akarma, non-action of the unenlightened person, the enlightened person sees that is still action, because you are involved with the body and mind. You identify with the body and mind. And just as one gets the results of action, so-called action, one will also get the results of so-called inaction. One is still caught in the law of karma. This is sa buddhiman manusheshu, Krishna says. So this person is wise. Very interesting, their language, because normally we think wise means the person who sees things as they are. So what as a thing is, if you see it like that, then you are wise. If you see something in the opposite way, then you're not wise. And here, karma. If one sees karma as karma and akarma as akarma, like action as action and inaction as inaction, then you are wise. But here Krishna is using just the opposite. He's saying, if you see in the midst of karma, you see no karma. And in the midst of no karma, you're seeing karma. That person is wise. So paradoxical language. Normally, we would think this is just the opposite. So this is pointing to a deeper truth, that from the perspective of our real nature, Satchidananda, there is no action at that level. And there is intense activity at the level of body and mind. At the level of body and mind also, if one tries to restrain so-called no action, that is also a kind of action. And then Krishna ends with a very important observation. Sayukta, this person is the real yogi, Kritsna Karma Krit, the doer of all actions. What an interesting phrase, Kritsna Karma Krit, the doer of all action. What is this doer of all action? Karma, our activities in the world, what is the point of anything that we are doing? Our whole life, from the perspective of Vedanta, from the perspective of Upanishads and Gita, the purpose of life is enlightenment. The goal of life is God realization. That is the goal of life. That is the goal of religion, philosophy. Ultimate purpose is enlightenment, God realization, moksha, brahmagyana, whatever you call it. That is the goal. Now, for that purpose, all activities are being done. Those who know it, do it knowingly. They are called spiritual seekers. They'll say we are doing sadhana. Those who say no, we are not interested in spiritual life, we are not doing sadhana, they are doing the same thing unknowingly. They think they're pursuing money, they think they're pursuing relationships, power, creativity, achievement in the life. That is my goal. But through that goal, they are seeking fulfillment. Whatever our goal in life, we are seeking ultimate fulfillment. And that ultimate fulfillment comes from enlightenment, from God realization. So knowingly or unknowingly, we are all pursuing fulfillment, which another name for which is God realization or Brahmagyana is moksha or nirvana. So he says the purpose of all activities is this moksha, is God realization. And this enlightened person who has seen action in non-action and non-action in action, this person has already achieved enlightenment. So he is the one, this person is the one who is the doer of all action. That means he has got the result of all activity. He has got fulfillment. He has got Brahmagyana. He has got moksha. So hence, doer of all actions. Next, there is a power-packed verse which comes. How do we do this practically? Verse number 19. Yasya sarve samarambha kama sankalpa varjita jnanagni dagdha karmanam tamaho panditam buddha. He whose actions are all free from the hankering for desires, whose actions have been burned by the fire of knowledge, him the wise call a sage. So, the question is, does the enlightened person engage in action? See, the unenlightened people, generally people, are engaged in the world because they want something. The enlightened person has attained everything. So will this enlightened person do any action whatsoever? And if so, then what is the philosophy behind that action? Why would an enlightened person engage with the world at all if one has already achieved the goal of life, God realization? And yet we see enlightened people, whether Shankara or Vivekananda, they are engaged. They do probably much more work than all of us. So why do they work? For what purpose? What is the philosophy behind it? And what can we learn from that? See, why does an ordinary person engage in activities? Why does a person, get an education, get a job, and earn money, and have a relationship, husband, wife, children, engage in politics, in social activity? Why? What is the purpose of it all? The purpose is fulfillment. You see, he says, Kama Sankalpa Varjita. It is all propelled by desire. So I want something. What is wrong with that? The problem is this, that I want something and I engage in activities, and yet I don't seem to be fulfilled. Whatever we are doing, whether we are engaged in relationships, in chasing money or power, those either people are frustrated by not getting what they want, or they engage in activities and get what they want, and yet they're not fulfilled. This is the experience across the board, across the world. Everybody has this experience that we are not getting this deep fulfillment we are looking for. Why? The reason is our activities are based on desire, and desire, where does this desire come from? Any kind of desire. The ultimate cause of all desire, according to Vedanta, is ignorance, avidya. So this is a phrase very dear to Adi Shankaracharya. He says, avidya kama karma, avidya kama karma. Avidya, ignorance; kama, desire; karma is activity or engagement in the world. What does he mean by this? Avidya or ignorance. What ignorance is this? It's not the ignorance of physics, chemistry, or Sanskrit or Chinese, not the ignorance of our worldly knowledge. It is ignorance of our real nature. We do not know who we are. We do not know what we are. That I am Satchidananda, infinite being, infinite consciousness, infinite bliss. I do not know that at all. Even if I read it, it still sounds theoretical to me. It does not seem to be a real thing to me. Not knowing this, then what happens is that which is presented to me, this body, this mind, this personality, I feel I am this. I am experiencing a body, I'm experiencing a mind, I'm experiencing thoughts and desires. So I am this body mind. I am this person called Sarvapriyananda. That is my immediate conclusion. So from ignorance comes this error that I am body mind. But the problem, what is the problem there? The problem is this body mind is very limited. The body is subject to birth and it will age, it has disease. One little thing like COVID can make the body very sick. Then it continuously needs food and shelter and warmth and clothing. So body has so many limitations. The moment I think I am body, then I'm subject to all these limitations. If I am body, then I will feel like all of us, we feel I am getting old, I am getting sick, I am hungry, I am tired, so all of this body related, this comes upon me, body and prana related. Mind, the moment I identify with the mind is also very limited, because the mind is very closely connected with the body. Any little problem in the body, little pain, mind becomes very upset, and I am identified with the mind, I am upset. There is a toothache or some kind of physical pain is there, or somebody misbehaves with me, and immediately there is a reaction in the mind. I am annoyed, I am hurt, I cannot forget how that person misbehaved with me. All this is the mind. Because of my ignorance of my real nature as Atman, I think I am the mind. When mind is upset, I am upset. Mind is unhappy, I am unhappy. Mind has desire, I want this and that, I have that desire, I want this or that. So identification with body mind, it leads to kama, desire. The body mind is limited, I feel myself limited, I'm looking for purnatva. I do not know that I'm already purnam, but I'm now looking for purnatva because I think I'm body and mind, and looking for that purnatva, fulfillment. What happens is I engage in action, and this action is prompted by desire. So karma, look at the chain: avidya, kama, karma, ignorance, then desire, then action. What kind of action? The sakama karma, karma which is prompted by desire. And this sakama karma, what happens is it gives rise to effects. Cause will have consequence. Cause will always have effects. Actions will have consequences. If I engage consciously, deliberately in dharmic action, then the result will be good. If I engage deliberately in adharmic action, the result will be bad. So this is the law of karma. This is something that in India, all the Indic traditions, Vedanta, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, all of them, so they accept this law of karma, that actions have consequences. Cause has effect. The moment my action is dharmic, result will be punya. Swami Vivekananda put it very nicely. Good, good, bad, bad, and none escape the law. Whosoever wears a form, wears the chain too. Good, good means good action, dharmic action. What will be the result? Good. Good means punya. And punya gives rise, punya means merit. Punya gives rise to sukha. So this is the law of karma. Dharma, punya, sukha. Righteous action, that leads to merit, and merit gives rise to happiness or pleasure or something desirable. What I want, I will get that. The opposite, adharma, papa, dukkha. Evil action, deliberately done wrong action, gives rise to demerit or sin, papa. And the result of that papa is the misery which we experience in our lives. The result of all of this, we are continuously experiencing as a mixture of sukha dukkha, pleasure and pain in our day-to-day lives. So this is the law of karma. Now, what can Vedanta do here? Swami Vivekananda says there is no escape from this. Cause and effect are following one another in like a causal chain. Then he says, but far beyond is Atman ever free. Know thou art that, sannyasi bold, and say Om Tat Sat Om. This is from Swami Vivekananda's very inspiring poem, Song of the Sannyasi. Vedanta tells us this causality is only at the level of the body. It's only at the level of the mind. You are neither body nor mind. You are this Atman ever free of causality. You are free of karma. So this freedom from the cycle of karma is attained not through karma, but through knowledge. The knowledge that I am the witness, Chidananda Rupa Shivoham. I am pure consciousness from my perspective, like the cinema screen, like the boat and the trees on the shore. The trees are not moving, they appear to be moving. I am beyond karma. You are ever free. So this insight is what is mentioned, is meant here. Now, having this insight, one still engages in karma. He says, Kama Sankalpa Varjita Samarambha. Enlightened person, after becoming enlightened, will they still engage in karma or not? Yes, they can, and they should, and they do engage in karma. Why? In Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna gives an answer, Loka Sangraha, for the welfare of the world. The enlightened person is engaged in action for the welfare of the world. Why is Krishna doing so much activity? He is doing more activity than anybody else. And yet he has nothing to gain from the activity. He says, in the three worlds, I have nothing to gain. Yet I am continuously engaged in action. Now, what the enlightened person does is an example for the rest of us. Shankaracharya, he writes, when Arjuna asks Sri Krishna that what is the characteristic of an enlightened person? Sthita pragyasya ka bhasha, in second chapter, the end of second chapter. And Krishna gives a beautiful answer. What is the characteristics of the enlightened person? Shankaracharya in his commentary there says, what is the use of knowing this? Is it some kind of advertisement for enlightened person? No. He says, Yani eva kritarthasya lakshanani, tani eva sadhakasya sadhanani, yatna sadhyatvat. Whatever are the characteristics of an enlightened person are the practices for the rest of us. It is a clue, it is a teaching, a suggestion for rest of us how to lead our lives. Because if we lead our lives like that, we will become enlightened. So if the enlightened person is engaging in action, Why? Loka sangraha, for the welfare of others. I have nothing to gain, Krishna says, but I work so that the whole world is given an example how to lead life and attain God realization. Krishna here, we will see in this verse, in the next verse, he gives this. So there are these three options. If you look at the lives of enlightened persons, one is after enlightenment also, one can continue to do activities. What activities? Our regular activities. What they were doing earlier, they continue to do. So Arjuna, he's a warrior. He's a Kshatriya. Whatever his activities, administration and fighting against enemies and all, from an enlightened perspective, you can still continue to do those duties. So Sri Ramakrishna gives a very funny example. A clerk was once put in jail for some reason. Now, when he's released from jail, Sri Ramakrishna says that when the clerk is released from jail, will he dance about like a madman or go back to his clerkship? So he will go back to what he was doing earlier. Similarly, when we are released from the jail of ignorance, one may continue to do what one was doing. There are so many such examples in the Mahabharata. A housewife, enlightened person, Brahmagyani, but housewife, who's teaching a rishi how to live in this world. A butcher, Vyadha, who is doing a gross work of killing animals and selling the flesh of the animals, Brahmagyani. So whatever activity was going on earlier is still going on now, but the entire perspective has changed. Karmanya karmaya pashyet. That very nice example, recent example, there was Nisargadatta Maharaj, who is an enlightened person who's, his book, the book of his teachings, he did not write it, but it was compiled from his teachings. I Am That is very popular. So he lived in Mumbai, in a very poor section of that town, of that city. When he attained enlightenment, he started, Nisargadatta Maharaj, he started walking for the Himalayas. But let me go, I don't want to do any of this, let me go and stay in the Himalayas. And then he stopped himself. What am I doing? The same realization, same Brahman which I see within myself is there in the Himalayas, is there here in Mumbai also. So why should I go to the Himalayas? This is a sign of ignorance. I will change my place. So like Arjuna is trying to say, I will not fight this battle. I will go away somewhere else. I will not stay in Mumbai. I will go to the Himalayas. Then what does Nisargadatta Maharaj do? He turns around and comes back to that living near a slum in Mumbai. And for the rest of his life, he lived there. And he continued to do what he was doing, a very small business he had, just like anybody else, yet fully enlightened. So that is one option. The enlightened person may continue to do the duties which that body and mind are supposed to do. The body and mind is a householder, engaged in activities in the world, will continue, do the best you can in that circumstance. If you are a monk, try to be the best, do the best that you can in that circumstance. You are free, you are Satchidananda. So that is one. The second option is that Sri Ramakrishna said, Shiva Jnani Jiva Seva, to see Shiva in all jivas and to worship Shiva by doing seva to the jivas. Swami Vivekananda explained further that not just one's own duties, but also the service of humanity by seeing God in them. He said, my God, the ignorant, my God, the sick, my God, the poor and the illiterate, and my God, the wicked, ignorant. So those who are suffering, I realize that God alone is appearing in all these forms, in the form of the sick person. And I can worship God there through medicine, through medical help and treatment, in the form of the hungry person. My Lord, my God is appearing in that form. I can help, I can worship, not help. I can worship God through giving food to that hungry person, because it's none other than God. Then my God appears in the form of the illiterate person, of the uneducated person. I can worship God there by offering education. So in all these ways, not just one's own duty, but an expanded view of action, that my action now becomes service. It becomes a worship of God through service of humanity. So that's the second option. So many great enlightened persons live in that way. whether it is Adi Shankaracharya or Swami Vivekananda and many others. So they expanded their activity as worship of God through service of humanity. Third option. First option, do one's duty. You are enlightened, keep on doing your duty. Krishna says that to Arjuna. Second option, worship of God in the form of suffering humanity, service to suffering humanity. Third option is one can actually withdraw from activity. You see, you cannot make a rule for an enlightened person. The enlightened person has to do this activity. No. Consider the case of Ramana Maharshi, who lived near a mountainside for the whole of his life after the enlightenment. Now, is that a useless life? Not at all. Swami Vivekananda says, such people may sit and choose to meditate in a cave, but their thoughts will remain and it will permeate the world and be a blessing to humanity, which is exactly true in the case of someone like Ramana Maharshi. He did not, remember, it was colonized India at that time, but Ramana Maharshi did not engage in political action. He did not engage in social action or poverty alleviation or starting hospitals. No. But he remained in his natural state of Brahma sthiti, and I am Satchidananda, Chidananda Rupa Shivoham, and that itself become a blessing to humanity. Or it could be a wandering monk like Totapuri, who was the guru of Sri Ramakrishna. He is not so engaged in so-called action, and yet that enlightened person, just by the being the way they are a blessing to humanity. So this is the third option. Three options. One is one may continue in one's present activities, whatever you are doing, your duty and your position in life as a fully enlightened person. Second, one may engage in activities which are for the service. So what, for example, you have organized the Gita Jayanti for so many people, and many people are benefiting from this and will benefit now that it will be online and on YouTube. So we'll keep on benefiting from this. This is a larger action. It is not within the limits of your particular day-to-day duty, but you have done this as a larger action for the benefit of all. And the third one, you cannot make a rule about a Brahmagyani that they have to be engaged in action. They may remain without so-called action, and yet their life will be a blessing for everybody concerned. Now, the lesson for us, all three are open to us. We can engage as sadhakas who have not yet attained enlightenment. But these are the three options. We can and we should engage. Krishna teaches Arjuna that you should engage in the activity in front of you. Every one of us has Kurukshetra. So do not run away from the Kurukshetra. Be engaged in the job, in the family, in the world from a completely spiritual perspective, knowing that you are Satchidananda. Know that you are Atman, far beyond name and form, free of the bond of karma, and then engage in karma. That is one. Second, one may engage in activities for the welfare of the world. That also will help us for our enlightenment. And third, one also may and should, once in a while at least, withdraw from external engagement and activity into an ashram or into the corner of our house in complete silence and peace, completely forgetting the external world. All three are possible. They are possible. They are the ways in which enlightened persons lead their lives, and they are the ways in which we also can lead our lives. Here, he says, this is the meaning of the phrase, Kama Sankalpa Varjita. Enlightened person, Sarve Samarambha. The enlightened person engages in all sorts of activities, and yet without the prompting of the Kama, of desire. Why do non-enlightened persons, enlightened persons engage in activity? Dharmartha Kama Moksha. Kama, for pleasure. For enjoying sensuous things, one tries to get the objects of pleasure. That is one motivation for Kama. For Artha, for money, for success, people are madly running all over the world. That is the second motivation for action. Third motivation, Dharma, righteous action. In this life, my life will go well, and after death, I will go to heaven. So otherworldly desire, Swarga, Swarga Kama, for going to Swarga, which is a sort of improved version of this world. And those who do not want anything, They want only spiritual realization, God realization, moksha. They also engage in action. They will do japa, dhyana, study the Gita, do seva to others, sadhana they will do. That's also action. So dharmartha kama moksha, this is the motivation for action for unenlightened person. Unenlightened may be worldly people, those who have artha and kama desire, or they may have otherworldly desire, swarga desire, for which they do dharma, or they may be spiritual people, like people who are gathered here. We are engaged in action for what? For moksha, for God realization. All of these, however, they come under the umbrella of unenlightened. Some are unenlightened and worldly, trapped in samsara. Some are unenlightened, but trying to get out of samsara, trying to get enlightenment. All are engaged in action. What does the enlightened person do? Notice Shankaracharya in his Nirvana Shatakam, he sings, Na dharmo na chartho na kamo na moksha chidananda rupa shivoham shivoham. So I'm not pursuing kama, I'm not interested. Now I'm not pursuing artha, not even pursuing swarga, not even pursuing moksha. No moksha. Why? Of course, he has already attained moksha. He knows that he is free. So from that perspective, chidananda rupa shivoham, he engages in action. Now I will jump to the last verse, another very important verse and beautiful and very famous verse. I think a lot of people recite it. Often we recite it, at least in our ashrams, before food, before taking prasad, we recite this verse, the 24th verse. Brahmarpanam brahma havi brahmagno brahmana hutam brahmaiva tena gantavyam brahma karma samadhina. The ladle is Brahman, the oblation is Brahman, it is offered by Brahman in the fire, which is Brahman. Brahman alone he attains who sees Brahman in all action. So often we chant this before food, but it's not just meant for eating food. This is an extraordinary philosophy which brings Advaita Vedanta into our daily life. What does this mean? The paradigm used here, the example used here is yajna. By yajna or homa, we know the sacred fire is lit and then offerings are put in the fire and the priest will chant the mantras. So this is the form of worship which ancient Vedic Hindus, and nothing dies in Hinduism, so even now homas are performed by Hindus. Of course, now our worship in Hinduism, worship is more of the form of puja. Deity is there and puja is done to the deity. But the earlier form of worship was the Vedic yajna. So that was the common form of religious activity during the time of Mahabharata and before that also. So Krishna uses that example, that religion for Arjuna would mean Vedic yajna. And now Krishna says, think of a Vedic yajna. What do you see in the yajna? Fire is there. What do you see in the yajna? Priest is there. Chanting is going on. Offerings are put by the arpana. Arpana means the ladle. So fire, Agni is there. Then the hutam, the offering, the ghee is poured, or clarified butter, or these are poured into the fire by using a wooden ladle like a spoon, arpana. Now all this is going on. Krishna says that actually the truth is, in the midst of these activities, this arpana, the spoon with which you are pouring into the fire, pouring offerings into the fire, that is not a spoon. It is Brahman. It is Satchidananda. The fire into which we are offering sacrifices, that is not fire. That is Brahman. It is Satchidananda. The offering itself, the ahuti, that is not an offering. That is Brahman. And then the one who is pouring, the person, the yajamana, the priest who is chanting, it's not yajamana or the priest. It is Brahman. You are none other than Brahman. The one who sees Brahman, Satchidananda, in every action, Brahma karma samadhi, Brahmaiva tena gantavyam, that one will realize Brahman. That one will become God realized, enlightened, will get moksha. So this is a complete philosophy of action. In the midst of all action. So here he is giving the example of yajna, but what he means is all the activities, all our so-called worldly activities can be spiritualized in this way. What is the proof? Remember, Krishna is trying to persuade Arjuna not to perform yajna. He's trying to persuade Arjuna to do his duty in the battlefield, in Kurukshetra, but to give him a philosophy of action, how to spiritualize that action. One of the great advantages of this path is that it is a powerful form of sadhana. In all other form of sadhana, whether it is meditation or prayer, we always come across a complaint that I'm trying to meditate, but my mind is going here and there. Or I don't have time to do puja, I don't have time to do japam. So much pressure of work is there, so much responsibilities are there in the amount of time and energy which goes into looking after our worldly pursuit. Then the very little time, very little energy is left over for, if you say now you have to do meditation, other spiritual practices. This is the complaint. Now the answer is given by Krishna here. Those very worldly pursuits which you are doing, you have a job, you have activities in your community, you have work to do in your family, you have personal work to do to take care of your body, your own health, your finances. All of this work, it can be spiritualized. It can become sadhana. Not automatically. The paradigm has to change. Our attitude has to change about it. So everything that is involved in the work becomes sadhana. Just like in the yajna, when you are doing the yajna, consider that the spoon, the ahuti, the fire, the one who is offering, all are nothing but Brahman. In the same way, in the office, in the school, at home, you consider the people around you, the instruments with which you are doing your work, the work that you are doing, and you who are doing the work, all are none other than Brahman. When you consider approach it with this attitude, he says, such a person is called Brahma Karma Samadhi. It is the sadhaka who is called Brahma Karma Samadhi. It's not a new type of Samadhi. It is the sadhaka who is called. You become Brahma Karma Samadhi. What does this mean? Who has Samadhi of seeing Brahman in all activity. This is Samadhi not with eyes closed. This is Samadhi with eyes open. In the midst of activity. Not in just activity in the temple, but activity in the office, activity in the school, activity at home. In all karma, one can see God. Seeing God, seeing that it is Satchidananda alone, it is appearing. Hey, Swamiji, I don't see it. That is my problem. All right. They say in Uttarakhand and Himalayas, there are only two ways. Jano ya mano. Either you understand it or you accept it. So if I don't understand it so far, if I say I'm complaining, I don't see Brahman, I don't see God in all beings, in all activities. All right, then you take it on faith. Krishna is telling you here, all the great spiritual masters are telling you, take it on faith that God exists everywhere. And then with that attitude, let us engage in action. Then one is called Brahma Karma Samadhi. Then you have meditation with eyes open. One of our great Swamis, Ashokanandaji, who was in the Bay Area in the Vedanta Society of Northern California, he says, where is God? Foolish question. Then the question will be where God is not. Everywhere you will find God. You will see God with open eyes. Then the problem, my mind is going here and there, will not be a problem. Wherever your mind goes, there is God. The work which you are engaged in, there itself the worship of God is going on. So this is a very powerful philosophy. There's one Swami, Anubhavanandaji, he's known as the Smiling Swami, very humorous. So in one talk, I was there virtually in that online program in India. In talk, he said, all the advice given by Sri Krishna to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita is useless. Very humorous. He says it's all useless. Why? Meditation. Sit still like this. Look at the tip of your nose. Close your eyes or half closed eyes. Control your breath. Like, can Arjuna do that in the middle of the battlefield? Duryodhana will shoot him with arrows. Bhakti to Bhagavan. In the midst of the battlefield, will Arjuna chant Hare Rama, Hare Krishna? And Duryodhana, the Kauravas will shoot him. It says all these sadhanas taught by Krishna to Arjuna are useless except one. That is the central teaching of Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. That is karma yoga, how to spiritualize day-to-day activities. Your own battlefield, the activity that you are doing in the battlefield, how to spiritualize that. That is practical for Arjuna, because that's what he has to do. Similarly, how to spiritualize our activities at home and in the office, that is practical for us. So this is the answer: to see God in every activity, to see God in every person, to see God as I myself, Aham Brahmasmi, that identity between Jiva and Brahman. This will spiritualize our action. And this is the answer to a great question we have: how to unite spirituality and our day-to-day life. See, we started with two great questions. What is God realization? How to attain God realization? Second, how to live my life? Now, the two questions have been given one answer. You live your life by seeing God in everything and in everybody, wherever you are, with whomever you are, doing whatever you are doing, and that is the way to attain God realization. Brahmaiva tena gantavyam. Such a person will attain Brahma Jnana. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Parnamastu. All right, so I think that's what I wanted to say. Let's see. Next, I think we have some Q&A.
Yes, Swamiji, thank you so much, Swamiji. But right before we go into Q&A, we have a couple of announcements. We also want to thank you for reintroducing clarity in how we read the Gita, pointing out that Krishna's words are not just beautiful, but as Swami Vivekananda ji highlighted, it's filled with calls to daily action. And that the enlightened do not excuse themselves from daily lives, but they live it with increased energy, with larger actions for the benefit of the world. Just before we move into the question and answer, we'd like to take a moment to highlight upcoming activities of Gita Jayanti as it is in its 25th year celebrations. Give me a second as I just quickly share my screen. So this year, upcoming next week, we do have the Krishna Manjari, which is featuring a singing sensation, Surya Gayatri, live at the PGB Hall. That will be on 10 September next week. Please do get your tickets from gitajayanti.org.sg. Tickets are moving quickly, so getting that as soon as possible would be great. We have heard Swamiji today, but we are very excited to have him come back and join us live in Singapore in December, on December 3rd, 5th, 6th, and 7th of this year for the final installment, 4 series for over 4 days of the IGF forum. You may wonder, why is it that we have skipped out the 4th? That is because we do have our Moksha, the Ekadashi, with a full Gita Parayanam, Samar Parayanam. We are hoping to get attendance of about 500 this year to chant. So we would please take this as an invitation for you, all of you, to join us if you can on the 4th of December. This year, the Gita Jayanti has also introduced a new activity called the Likita Gita Samarpan, which is offering Gita and learning the Gita through handwriting the verses. You are also welcome to offer all your completed books by December 4th to be placed at the altar at the Gita Parayan for the blessings that, to receive those blessings. Swamiji, I think we are ready to go into the question and answer session. We have quite a number of questions, but due to time constraints, we will be handling select questions. Sorry, I do apologize. I did miss out one additional announcement, and I don't think we should skip it because it is the annual Children's Art Competition, and that is always a favorite. It is due to take place in mid-September under the theme Vasudeva Kudumbakam. So if you do have children who are budding artists, please do ask them to join. Swamiji, with our first question, we start with, how does a yukta or jnani see vikarma? And in what way does the third type of jnani that you action that the jnani can take, which is not doing anything, actually be a blessing to everyone. Could you please elaborate?
Yes. So how does the yukta, the person, yukta means one who's engaged in yoga, or even deeper meaning is one who's centered in one's real nature as Brahman. Aham Brahmasmi is very clear to such a person. So such a person sees action as Brahman. Satchidananda alone is appearing as the person doing the action, as the action itself, and as the beneficiary of the action. He sees nothing, he or she sees nothing other than God everywhere. So there is God with eyes open, God with eyes closed. Sri Ramakrishna once said that God is there when I close my eyes, God is not there when I open my eyes. What kind of God is that? So the enlightened person with eyes open, whatever you are seeing, it is a sign of our ignorance that we see it as a human being, an animal, sky, earth, good and bad. All of those are true, just like all the pictures in the movie are there. But underneath the pictures, the reality behind it is the screen of the movie. Similarly, the reality behind all action is Satchidananda Brahman. Now, the second question, there are some jnanis who actually are not directly involved in action. Directly involved in action means they may not be directly giving lectures or writing books, running hospitals or schools, or undertaking activism for suffering people. Apparently, they may not be involved. The thing is, once a person is enlightened, there can be no rule for such a person. All rules, all sadhanas, all practices are meant for us so that we can attain enlightenment. For the enlightened person, one cannot predict, one cannot dictate also or predict how that person will live the rest of the life as a Jivan Mukta. So many of them are, of course, quite obviously engaged in action, like Adi Shankaracharya, Vivekananda, and many, many others. Some, again, may not be so much apparently involved in action. But as I said, this is Vivekananda's own words, just their presence, the feeling of oneness, the blessings they have for humanity in their meditation, in their presence, that will become a blessing for all of humanity. A classic example is life of, for example, Sri Ramana Maharshi, who remained in that cave in near the mountain Arunachala, and look how his life is a blessing for spiritual seekers, giving peace to everybody around the world. And there were many such, there were many Mahatmas who had attained Jivan Mukti. For example, Sri Ramakrishna's own guru, Totapuri, so who was a wandering monk. Now he's not alone. There were many such wandering monks. Or Trailanga Swami, who is very well known in Benares, who lived for nearly 300 years, apparently not engaged in any activity. Of course, they did teach more by their presence than their words, and their very presence is a benefit for humanity. Yeah.
Swami, there is a small update. There is a vikarma. How does a jnani see vikarma, not just karma? That was the question.
Oh, karma, akarma, there is one vikarma also. Vikarma means viruddha. That means the wrong action. So wrong action is also action. That a person very clearly, that issue has not been taken up by Krishna here, because that's very clear. If I do action which is adharmic, why would I do action which is adharmic? Why would anybody tell a lie, would cheat, would accept bribes, or harass other people, or cause suffering to others? Only because of desire. See, a person tells a lie, for example, either due to temptation or due to terror, fear or desire. If I tell the truth, there will be bad consequences for me, so let me tell lies. That is vikarma. If I tell untruth, then I will get more money. My greed is so much, I cannot control. I know it is wrong, I know it is vikarma, I still go ahead and do it because I cannot control myself. That was Duryodhana's classic answer to Sri Krishna. Sri Krishna said, what you are doing is adharma. Please do dharma. Duryodhana says, I know what is dharma. I know what is adharma. Don't teach me that. My problem is not that I do not know dharma and adharma. My problem is I cannot, I know what is dharma, I don't feel like doing it. I know what is adharma, I cannot stop myself from doing it. So that is vikarma. And that, the result of that will be papa and suffering in life. So one goes from that level to the next higher level to do good karma, dharmic action. So that is the perspective.
Thank you, Swamiji. The next question that we have asks, in the verse 18 of chapter 4, the term, what does the term Krishna Karmakrit in this context mean?
Yes. Krishna Karmakrit is an interesting use of philosophical language. Krishna means all, total, samagram. Karma means action. Krit means the doer. So such a person, the enlightened person, is called the doer of all action, Krishna Karmakrit. But what does it mean? So as I explained earlier, what is the purpose of action? The ultimate purpose, the practical purpose right now might be, I am in a school, I want to graduate and get a degree. Or I have got a degree, now I'm trying to get a job. Or I have got a job, I'm trying to earn money. So these are the practical purposes of our activity. But behind all this, the real purpose is fulfillment. I want ananda, peace, joy, fulfillment. So that is my goal. And all karma will ultimately lead to God realization, moksha. That's the goal of human life. Why is that the goal of human life? Because this moksha is nothing other than ananda, fulfillment. Our fulfillment is our goal. Nobody can deny that. Who can deny that fulfillment is not my goal? But the greatest fulfillment, the final fulfillment, the deepest everlasting fulfillment is moksha, God realization. And this jnani, this enlightened person, has already attained it. So having attained moksha, having attained Brahma Jnana and moksha, that means this person has done that for which all karmas are going on. All karmas are going on to ultimately help us to lead us to God realization. This jnani has already reached God realization. So from that perspective, Krishna is saying he is the doer of all karmas, because all karmas have culminated in God realization. He has attained God realization, hence he is the doer of all karmas, in the sense of having accomplished what karma is supposed to accomplish, that is God realization, ultimately.
Thank you, Swamiji. I think that leads us into the next question. I think related is this person is interested to know, when you did talk about avidya, what is exactly the difference between avidya and maya?
Right. The straight answer to that would be, avidya is at the level of jiva, our level. Ignorance is at our level. And at the level of Ishvara, it is maya. So maya is a power. In Vedanta, maya, there's a technical definition. Let me give you the technical definition. Samashti ajnana upahita chaitanyam is Ishvara. Consciousness, ultimate reality, Satchidananda, associated with maya is called Ishvara, Saguna Brahman, God, the God of religion. Vyashti ajnana upahita chaitanya is Jiva. That means a part of maya, a fraction of maya, which is ignorance or avidya, when that is associated with pure consciousness, it becomes Jiva or appears as Jiva, as you or I. As long as we are in ignorance, we do not know our real nature, we are said to be under the influence of avidya. Now, maya is the power of Ishvara. And what is it made of? Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. And all our individual ignorance is because of this maya. A very good example, way to understand this is Sri Ramakrishna's use of this example of the snake, the cobra. The cobra has the poison in its fangs, in its poison glands, in its mouth. And that poison, a tiny bit of that poison, is enough to knock out a frog or a mouse. Little bit of that poison. But all the poison is in the glands of the cobra. It does not affect the cobra. The poison is the power of the cobra, but it is extremely dangerous for the mouse or the frog, which is the prey of the cobra. Similarly, maya is the power of Ishvara. It does not affect Ishvara. Ishvara is called Maya Dhisha, Lord of Maya. Ishvara deploys this maya for creating this universe. And under the influence of this Maya, we are trapped in ignorance. But then is Ishvara bad? Is Ishvara keeping us under ignorance? Not at all. Through this Maya, Ishvara is leading us from ignorance to knowledge. Maya is of two kinds, avidya Maya and vidya Maya. Avidya Maya, lust and anger and desire and greed, that is avidya Maya, Maya of ignorance. There is a Maya of knowledge, vidya Maya. What is vidya Maya? Dispassion, vairagya, viveka, that God alone is real, the world is not real. The desire to attain God realization, bhakti, jnana, these are also within Maya, but they are vidya Maya, that Maya of knowledge, which will lead us beyond Maya to our real nature.
Thank you, Swamiji. We have our final two questions right before we wrap our session up. So the next question that we have is the yogic concept of nirvikalpa samadhi the same as the Advaita Vedanta's enlightenment as well as Brahmakara vritti?
So let me answer from something I was reading. The same question was asked to Ramana Maharshi in a slightly different way. The question was asked was that in Upanishads in Vedanta we get terms like avang manasagocharam, beyond speech, beyond mind. Again we get manase vedam aptavyam, by mind alone it is to be attained. So Brahman, the ultimate reality, is said to be beyond mind, it's said to be attained by the mind. How can both be true? So there Ramana Maharshi says it is attained by mrita mana. The word he uses is the mind which is dead. Mind which is dead means the mind where the activities of the mind have subsided or have been restrained. In other words, samadhi, nirvikalpa samadhi. When in the nirvikalpa samadhi, when the activities of the mind cease temporarily, the reality of the self is revealed, that I am Satchidananda becomes clear. And this is the Yoga Sutra says this. Tada drashtu swarupe avasthanam. In asampragyata samadhi, the witness consciousness that I, the Satchidananda, is appreciated, realized in its real nature. Now, is it the same as the Brahmagyana of Advaita Vedanta? In Advaita Vedanta, classical Advaita Vedanta, the royal road, the method is not nirvikalpa samadhi, but vichara. Vichara means inquiry. I am not the body, not the mind. Drigdrishya vivek is there, panchakosha vichara is there, avasthatraya. These are all very deep and very extraordinarily insightful topics. But these methods are inquiry into who am I. That is the method. Then what is the role of nirvikalpa samadhi or asampragyata samadhi? Nirvikalpa samadhi or asampragyata samadhi is a very powerful help. One might say indispensable. Notice how when the question was asked, it was actually a sannyasi who asked the question to Ramana Maharshi. And Ramana Maharshi's answer was, how do you realize? He says, the answer is by quietening the mind, by calming the mind in nirvikalpa samadhi. He does not use the word nirvikalpa samadhi, but he says the mrita mana, the dead mind, he uses that. That means activities are restrained for a time being, then the realization occurs.
I think, Swamiji, you must have paused a prediction because that has neatly actually led us to the final question, which is the question that in the Gita, it is often said that one must abide in the Atman. So is there a specific process or a method for converting this knowledge that we have into the daily actions?
Yes. Karma, bhakti, dhyana, and jnana, all of them. When I am not working selfishly for this one body mind, all my activities are dedicated to God or dedicated to the welfare of the same Atman in all bodies and minds, then I'm abiding in the Atman through karma. Karma yoga helps me to abide in the Atman, step 1. Step 2, bhakti. When I see my beloved Lord in all beings and I serve my beloved Lord through service to all beings, then again I'm abiding in the self, in the Atman. How? Because remember, God, your Ishta Devata, and your Atman are one and the same thing. Sri Ramakrishna says in Bengali, Jejar Ishta Shetar Atma. Whoever is your Ishta Devata, maybe Ganesha, maybe Krishna, in whichever form you worship God, that is actually none other than the Satchidananda within you, your own Atman. So worship, devotion to God is also abiding in the self. Second. Third, meditation. Our activities of the mind obscure the fact that I am the Atman. Yoga Sutra says, when you calm the activities of the mind, yoga chitta vritti nirodha, cessation of the movements of the mind is yoga. When you do that, tada drashtu swarupe avasthanam, then the witness consciousness, Atma, is realized in its real nature. So the third way of abiding in the self is deep meditation. And the fourth, deepest, final way is jnana, is realizing aham brahmasmi. And that realization should be so clear that when one realizes that I actually always abide in the self. The idea that I do not abide in the self is ignorance. I am whatever you are that, you are the self only. Just as whether I am walking or talking or eating or sleeping, I am Sarvapriyananda. Right now, I think that. Similarly, the enlightened one realizes whatever activity is going on, I am in the self. There's no further effort required to abide in the self. From the Jnani standpoint, removing the error that one does not abide in the self. I have slipped away from the self somehow. That's an error. That error, removing that error is abiding in the self. That I am not the self is an error. Remove that error, that is abiding in the self. From the Dhyani's point of view, the disturbances generated by the mind, calm that down, that is abidance in the self. From the Bhakta standpoint, that treating somebody as other than God, thinking about something other than God, desiring things in the world and not loving God, that is slipping away from the self. Bhakti, love of God, is abidance in the self, because God and the self are one reality. I am Atma Brahma. This very self is Brahman. And from the karma yogi standpoint, the selfishness is not abiding in the self. Selflessness is abiding in the self. It's paradoxical. Abiding in self is selflessness. This is abiding in the capital S self, not the smallest self.
Thank you so much, Swamiji. We've come to the end of the question and answer session, and we appreciate the clarity and guidance in your answers. And if at all, if there is one thing that we can take away from today's session, is that no matter how complex modern life is that we are luckier than Arjuna, because we do not have to worry about being shot by arrows while we meditate. We look forward to hearing you live later this year in December. As we take leave of Swamiji, I'd like to now welcome Sri G. Srinivasan Ji, Chairman of the Gita Jayanti Committee, to close today's series with a vote of thanks. Sri G. Srinivasan Ji, please.
Hari Om. Every time, Swamiji has said that our goal for life should be fulfillment. Although it's a tough job for us, but we always attain it temporarily whenever we head to Swamiji for the whole one hour session. So thank you, Swamiji, for giving us a very fulfilling session, lecture, and taking us through the very complex subject of karma, vikarma, and as well as akarma. You explained it very beautifully. It's a very complicated area that not many people want to touch upon that, but you have done it wonderfully. Thank you very much, Swamiji, and also for the enlivening question and answer sessions that followed your lecture. We are eagerly looking forward to your presence in physical form in December, and we hope to have much more drops of wisdom entering our mind, nectar of your wisdoms. Thank you, Swamiji. And we like to thank all our organizers, Hindu Enlightenment Board, Hindu Advisory Board, for their wonderful support, as well as the Gita Jayanti technical team, the people who have chanted the prayer, I'm going to chant the prayers, and all the global audience all over there. And permit me to add one special note to the MC who got up very early in the morning. She lives in LA area. Thanks very much, Swamiji. Thank you very much. Now I request Sunil Kumarji to offer the closing prayers.
Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramayah Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhaved. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamataya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.
Krishna Kumarji, I think.
Swamiji already has left the meeting.
No, he's there. I think, but I think the session is over. You can.
Yeah, Swamiji, I mean, we want to take a photograph. I think if whoever is available, we'll take a photo. I'm not able to see Swamiji.
I think he might have left.
I think, okay.
Do we want to stop the live streaming, Krishna Kumarji?